Hi, this is Ron Stallings at 102.5 FM, Amazing 102.5. Today, I am talking with Vice Chairman Sarah Trotty of the Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum in Fourth Ward, Texas. Good afternoon, Ms. Trotty.
Good afternoon. I am happy to be here and to have the opportunity to share with you some of the things that the Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum in Freedmanstown, Houston, Texas, has contributed to this community.
That's great. So let's start off by telling our listeners and viewers who have never heard of the museum, what's the museum about, what's its mission, and why should they come and visit?
I'll be happy to share that information with you and with the listening public out there. It's nothing more important than good information. The Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum, located in Freedmanstown, just off of Dallas and
Which is Fourth Ward?
We know it as Fourth Ward,
but
it was originally Freedmanstown, and so we still use that designation, Freedmanstown. And also because Freedmanstown is gaining that kind of information as a cultural destination, and so we don't want that to be lost on the public.
Okay. Good.
Let me tell you a little bit about us.
Please do.
Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum was founded more than 28 years ago by Ole Yates McCullough and Catherine Roberts. Ole Yates McCullough wanted to save her family's property, which was going in deterioration. It looked like it wasn't going to do anything but fall down, but it was soon discovered that those houses built in this area of Houston, formerly a kind of sandy area that nobody wanted, it was homes that were built with the materials that were there by former freedmen and emancipated slaves who settled there in 1865.
Okay.
So the materials that they used built homes, and these were built from the ground up, which is unique to Houston and Texas and to this country, because most of the occupants at that time in 1865 went to areas that were already, especially if you're on the East Coast, that were already pre-built. So these were built from the ground up, as I said before, in an area that was considered swampland. And these residents used skills to build their own homes, homes that are considered some of the best original sources in this country. In fact, Stephen Fox from Rice University used to take his architecture students there just to look at these houses and to look at how they were built and how strong they were.
Now, it's my understanding there's like 6 original homes still standing in the area?
There may be a few more than 6, but we, as the Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum, own 6 structures on 11 properties in the area. And it was our goal to purchase and locate these structures and then to preserve them according to national preservation standards. And that's what we've done. And we want to educate the public about the importance of homes remaining on their site, their location, and then the preservation, going back to the original structure, removing the paint and all the other things there carefully so that you're not adding to, you're not just remodeling, you are preserving what was original.
Talk about how often is the museum open? Is it Monday through Friday or weekend or certain days of the weekend? What are the hours?
Well, we actually are open for tours by appointment.
Okay.
We'd love to have regular hours. We can be found there on the site generally toward the weekend on Thursday, Friday, and sometimes on Saturdays because we have an architect, Xavier, that works there helping to dig and find the original artifact of that neighborhood. And then we have a historian, Deborah Sloan, who also is there as well and provides and works with our tour guides and provides tours for that.
Oh, great.
But they can get those tours online.
So on our 102.5 listeners, educators, churches, did you hear Ms. Trotty say that they are appointments only? This sounds like a great educational opportunity to bring your students, your church members, and learn more about Freedmanstown and the activities that's going on through the museum.
And I want to be sure that the mission, I want to just read it to make sure that we have it very clear what our mission is.
Your mission statement? Please
our
do.
Mission statement. RBHY has a mission to promote the preservation, education, archaeology, and research of African diaspora history, focusing on the period of enslavement and post-slavery in the area of Houston's Freedmanstown, the Gulf Coast region of Texas, and their connections to other regions in the world. Our vision is to have this museum complex in Freedmanstown as an African heritage, international research, educational, and tourism destination for Texas. So tourism is important to Houston.
That's good.
And to Texas, and we have a lot to offer.
Good. Why don't you give our listeners and viewers information on how they can reach the museum, either website or phone number?
Well, the website is certainly the best way to schedule tours, and that's rbhyates.net.
Do it one more time, just in case somebody missed it.
I want to be sure I did it correctly. I'm sorry. I should have said rbhy.org.
Okay.
rbhy.org.
Okay.
So we're made up with a board of, I call us working board. A number of people come together to make this happen. And then we have a slew of volunteers. One of the things that's most interesting when people do come to the area to see us, and we're right off of Dallas.
Downtown.
Right behind downtown.
Okay.
Between Matthews, off of Valentine, between Matthews and Wilson. Right there by St. James ME Church. Some of you may be familiar with that. The location there on Andrews Street, 1314 Andrews Street, and we do have parking across the street. The location there is the home of Rutherford B.H. Yates, who's the son of Jack Yates. Most people are familiar with the history of his father, Jack Yates, and his founding of several churches in here, and the school named after him. They may not be as aware of the son, Rutherford, and Rutherford became a printer.
Oh, wow.
And with his skills in the small house, which was next door to his dad's house at the time, he was able to help the public learn about what was going on. Of course, that would be the period that was sort of an early Jim Crow area in Houston that we know of. And so these homes, the ones that we're preserving, many of them were built either in the late 1800s, early 1900s, as was the case with the Jack Yates house. We received a Good Brick Award for the preservation for what we've done. And we've been able to help the churches in the area receive historical markers. We also have one in front of our home. So you'll see those which help. That's the first part of our educational tool, to help learn a little bit about each of the structures that are there, as well as the tours, which would provide much more of the education that's there.
This sounds like some great information, but I'm going to switch gears on you. Let's talk about what are some of the challenges that the museum faces, and how can the community come and support and help?
Well, like any nonprofit, funding is always a challenge. And so we are always very grateful, and we are thankful for the grant that we received to help us with some of the work that we're doing here in the Houston area. We are looking for objects, historical objects, and artifacts from the eras of these homes that were built. We're looking for people with skills and interest in rolling up their sleeves and working. We have a cleanup every month of the spaces, the yards that we have. We have volunteers who actually come almost every day and help to restore the buildings. I mean, we're removing by hand the paint and all the other things from those buildings, and then after that, with the skills that we have available, and sometimes we have to use contractors, but we are restoring the wood to its natural state. We have all of our buildings, and this is important, or at least 80% original. The homes in that 80% original. And if we have to replace some of those, we need to have the funds, and we seek those funds to go out and find objects that, say, if it's a window or something, that fits that time frame. And so cost becomes an important part. So funding is certainly important to us. Donations certainly are important, as well as, you know, as we said before, lending your skills.
So as we wrap up our session about the museum, why don't we end on a note as, once again, where can volunteers sign up, contact you? Sponsors, where can they reach you to say, hey, I want to be a sponsor. I've enjoyed our session. I was intrigued. I got things that I can probably donate as artifacts. How can they reach you?
Well, certainly we have online, rbhy.org, or they can look up Freedmanstown Museums Incorporated, but make sure that you go to the RBH Yates site. You'll see the small framed house. You'll see the things that we've done. You'll see our logo, and we give examples of all the work that volunteers have done to each of these houses. We're interested. We have the Pullman House. Pullman was a great leader in the area for medical and education. We have the J. Vance Lewis House. We have for lawyers and the legal world and all that. So there's so many things they can do to help, and so many skills they can offer. Okay.
Well, you've heard it firsthand from Mrs. Sarah Trotty here at Amazing 102.5. Please reach out to her or the organization in terms of if you want to be a volunteer or a sponsor. And Ms. Trotty, thank you so much for coming in. You've shared a lot of great information regarding the museum. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it so much.
Welcome back to Amazing 102.5. I am talking with Sarah Trotty, the Vice President of Rutherford B. H. Yates Museum here in Houston, Texas. And we left off in talking about the museum and a little bit of its origin, but now let's get into some of the organizational structure. Ms. Trotty, how did you get involved, and why are you involved in the museum?
I have been involved with the museum for almost its full existence. I say almost. I wasn't there in the founding part of it. But shortly after it received its 501c2, I was called by Catherine, and at that time I was working at Texas Southern University, Department of Art, and we ended up talking quite a while about what this museum was about. So I ventured out to go to take a look, and I was completely hooked and have not left since.
Okay. What hooked you on it?
What hooked me on it was the cultural history that was right there at our doorsteps, and the freeways and everybody else was just passing by.
Really? Okay.
And it was so rich a cultural history that it had to be saved, and its history had to be told.
Okay.
And all of those who are on our board believe the same thing.
Oh, so you got hooked and brought some other folks on board, too.
I did bring some people on. They brought some other people on.
Okay.
That's how it goes. That's true. People bring other people.
That's right. Right. Talk about those other board of directors and what they see as a vision and what they like about the museum and what keeps them motivated to keep the museum going.
Well, there certainly were those founding members that were there that I wasn't a part of the founding. I was that very next segment. So Luther Brown, who was in music and was there with the education, we pay homage to him because he actually brought on the First Universalist Church, who has become supporters of us for a long time. But currently, we have as our board chair Byron Cobbin, who's in education and technology and who's been a really able leader, keeping us on course. We have Theo Harrington, who was brought in by somebody I brought in from the public affairs at Texas Southern University. Had talked with Barrington, and Barrington brought in Theo Harrington, who has added so much in terms of our understanding of the role in the community and our public connection to the community. We have Carolyn Burnley, who's a retiree, I believe with Shell as well, and who's brought her leadership skills there to help us. We have Kathy Plow, who is an accountant, who adds and volunteers her skills to keep our books and does an excellent job. We have Meg Boulwar, who is a lawyer, who works with us. We have Al Henson, who has been connected not only with TSU and Prairie View, I think with U of H as well, who brings his technology skills. And he brought in Kareem Hazmat, who brings some of the technology, because we really need that technology element, to keep us going, to help people become aware of where we are and who we are. Catherine Roberts, of course, was the co-founder and is still very much the strong, committed person for us. And, of course, myself, I almost forgot Freeman Krabs, Kristen Krabs, who works with development and personnel with one of the companies she's with. So we have those. And then we have Deborah Blacklock Sloan, who's our historian. We have Xavier, who works in archaeology and does all those tours. So those are the people who work, with us part-time. And then a slew of volunteers, and they're headed by Joel Harmon, who's a retiree also from Shell and does a lot of the work that we do. And Phil Richardson, who's with the First Universalist Church, Warren Snipes, Joe, a lot of people who just come. And even I took a friend I've been trying to reach over the other day, and his name is Jewel, Mr. Jewel, and he volunteered his skills. So each one reach one, we all kind of reach out to get other people to come in and volunteer their skills to help us, because an organization like us is run mainly by people who are there because they love what's going on, they want to help, and they freely give of their talents and their skills and their time, and then money as well, because you can't exist without financial support.
I can probably hear some of our 102.5 amazing folks that are tuning in thinking, hey, can I be on the board? And are you looking for board members? And if so, is it a paid position or is it more volunteer position?
Well, we're strictly a volunteer working board. But we are looking for other people to help us on the board. So certainly you can be on the board. You mentioned technology. Are there any other areas of background you may be interested in? We're certainly looking for people who have good fundraising skills, because that's one of the things we have to do. We're looking for people certainly who have this development and motivational skills, those who can do marketing, of course. Marketing is extremely important, and we work with different groups that we've paid, but you still have to find the right fit, and we're still working on finding that marketing group that can carry us to that next level, because that's what's going to help spread the news about what we're doing.
So as you can hear, if you're tuning in to Amazing 102.5, listening to Sarah Trotty and the Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum, she mentioned if you're interested in volunteering or becoming a board member in the area of marketing, feel free to reach out to them. Ms. Trotty, give them the email address that they can reach you at once again.
Well, what I gave you was the site, rbhyates.org. And when you go on there, there are buttons that you can push to donate or volunteer and leave information. And so that's a good way to get us.
The good way to get started. Okay, good. So let's move into the organization. Where do you see this museum going in 3 to 5 years? Where do you see it project out 3 to 5 years from now? Where would you like to see the museum?
Well, within 3 to 5 years, we want to have our spaces, those structures I mentioned, those 6 structures, we'd like to have them all ready for tours. And to, at that time, have the kind of staff it will take to provide those tours. Not volunteer staff as we're using now, but paid staff to help us with those tours. We can enact some of the things that are historical, significant periods with that, but just to tell the stories of the people who lived and built this area. Few people realize how many important aspects of what we know today as Houston originated right there in Freedmanstown. We are in the shadows, what it looks like right now, of downtown. But at one point, we were part of downtown before it became smaller.
Well, and you're interesting that you talked about it earlier. We all, or I should say most of us, are familiar with Jack Yates, but very few of us, including me, is not familiar with his son Rutherford. So this is history by itself, just saying Jack Yates obviously had a family and an influential family member in the community as well.
Yes, and you know, his granddaughter, Ole Yates McCullough, is the reason we got involved with this house. She was a teacher. So there's so much, but the 3 houses that sit right there on the corner of Andrews and Wilson are leaders, very important early leaders within the Houston community. So Ned Pullum, not only was he a minister, but he was an entrepreneur.
Well, let's take a break, and we'll be right back to finish our conversation with Miss Sarah Trotty from the Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum. Welcome back to Amazing 102.5 FM. We are speaking with Miss Sarah Trotty, the Vice President of the Rutherford B.H. Yates Museum here in Houston, Texas. Ms. Trotty, why don't you talk to the audience about what's a typical day that you have at the museum, or what's a typical day at the museum?
Well, the typical day at the museum currently is a day where volunteers have rolled up their sleeves and they're out there in the sun or in the rain pulling out old, discarded pieces, nails, shoring up the buildings and making sure that these buildings are carefully and lovingly restored to their original life.
Okay, good.
There are some beautiful wallpapers there. So people, when they think about where former slaves and freedmen landed in most communities, they think of them as just run down and dilapidated, and people wore old clothes. But if you really look at Freedmanstown, Houston, Texas, and the corner that we're restoring, you can see that these were some of our early leaders.
Wow.
And they built gorgeous homes for that time period with wallpapers and all the things that you'd want to have. And so people like Ned Pullum, J. Vance Lewis, Pauline Gray, they were actually, and I don't want to fail to mention that there were 2 women who in the late 1800s purchased land right there on that corner of Wilson and Andrews. Had to do it with help from Pullman at first because, you know, women couldn't purchase.
Right, that's right.
So certainly if you were not only a woman, but you were African American, you couldn't purchase land.
No rights at all.
And so that corner, we like to tell the story. And one of the things that I really am proud of is that Pauline Gray made sure that the land stayed in the name of the family. So even when the land on the corner was allowed to be built as the home of J. Vance, the property still remained in the name of the original owners.
The original. So
J.
when
Vance Lewis, I forgot to mention his last name, and he was a well-known lawyer.
Okay. So you mentioned the wallpaper and these decorative ambiance that they had. Is that still available to see now when people come to the museum?
Well, what we do is we preserve that. We try to preserve as much of what's still there.
Got it.
And we have it on the plexi where you can still see it. We are the original doors, the original windows, the floors, all those things are there. We're trying to also fill it with furniture that would be pertinent to the particular
Time.
areas and times. And then we not only do the preservation, we have to tell the stories. And these people who live there have such interesting stories.
I'm sure they do.
Very interesting stories. J. Vance Lewis was a lawyer. In fact, he held court on that corner. And he couldn't practice in the courts himself. He had to prepare the cases. But he managed to do one case that got him run out of town because he won it. But he didn't give up. You know, he studied and got a medical degree and came back and held court on his corner.
Good, good.
Pullman, as we said, had Pullman bricks. He had barber shops. He had shoe shops. So they were all entrepreneurs.
All entrepreneurs. Yeah.
They not only paid for the bricks on those streets, there was a trolley that moved through there that we'd like to see brought back to life, that carried them down Andrews Street downtown. And downtown was where the apartment, I would call it, the buildings where they had the professional buildings, the early school, the library, all of those things were right there close.
Got it.
Not all of them are there now, but historical markers we try to get.
So these were entrepreneurs way back when.
Oh, yes.
So that's a motivation to our generation and the folks that are listening to Amazing 102.5 to never give up. And they had challenges much more than we have today.
Oh, yes. And many of them, some of them moved out to other areas within the Houston area, and we see them as leaders. But a lot of them were there with that founding area. So we want to tell those stories, and we do.
Well, that's a good transition. Talk about the history then of the museum and their history to give us a snapshot of some of the things they went through during that time.
Well, the museum itself was legally founded in 1996 as the Rutherford Beach Yates Museum with the mission that we mentioned earlier. And some of the things that we've done and contributed to the community, in addition to the historical markers for most of the churches, there are several churches that are more than 100 years old that are still functioning in that area. So we've helped them with their historical markers, and we've done that research. In addition to that, we were instrumental with the what is called the, I want to make sure I call it with the correct term now, the Sites of Memory for UNESCO.
And what does that mean?
That was when we helped a number of the organizations, not only in Freedmanstown, but throughout Houston, apply for designations as historical sites of memory on the trail of emancipation.
Okay.
So we were very instrumental in that at the time, and we're very proud of what we were able to do, and that was in 2019 when we worked with that. So we worked with about 79 organizations, and we had 2 of our buildings designated as sites of memory because of their history, and we were trying to get them all. You know, we had more, but we were glad to get the 2 identified, and the others are ready to be identified as well. We believe that the archaeology helps to tell the stories, and so we give workshops for Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and anybody, educational tours that want to learn how to do it. People working on their graduate degrees have come and worked with us. We've given scholarships. Prairie View students, architectural department, helped us do our first big plan, and they've been very instrumental in helping us do a lot of the drafts of what the buildings are like and what it needs to be, and so all that's been very helpful to us.
Now, before I go further, you mentioned scholarship. Do you do that annually, or is that periodically that you guys provide scholarships?
Well, the scholarships that we do are not necessarily annually. It's when we have the funds to do them, so it's not on a constant basis, but we have provided about 49 of them so far, for people to come, and especially if they're wanting to study archaeology, or they want to study history, or any of those kinds of things.
Good, good. Well, as we wrap up, Ms. Trotty, is there any parting words you want to leave our amazing 102.5 viewers and listeners to tune in, that are tuning in, about the museum?
Yes, there's some things I want you to know as a community, regardless to your interest. Maybe you're interested in plants. We have historical roses and other plants that have been there as long as those houses. And so we've worked with plant societies to maintain those. And we have people, if they're interested in history, you certainly can help contribute to the understanding and interpretation of the history that's there. If you're interested, as we said before, in just the history of the culture of people, we certainly have a lot of that. And we love people who want to be engaged in doing the research. We need tour guides.
Oh, wow.
So when we open, if you're interested in volunteering your time and learning what it takes to be a tour guide, we certainly would be more than happy to have people to just come and volunteer as tour guides.
Well, thank you for this time. I think you've heard it very loud and clearly that the Rutherford B. H. Yates Museum is should be a stop on your to-do list this holiday season, Thanksgiving, New Year, Christmas season, and if not, throughout the year. And as she mentioned as well, they are desperately in need of volunteers, sponsors that can advocate for the museum and keep the museum going. So thank you, and for visiting the Lift at 102.5 FM. Have a great day.
Thank you.